Afraid of remaining powerless, Gwen joins training, and when Nesta deepens her friendship with Emery, the shopkeeper joins them in the training ring at the House of Wind. Tensions rise around the Dread Trove and Nesta's power and the need for the inner circle to find the items before Queen Brialyn. Cassian opens up about feeling outmatched by Eris, and in a rare, vulnerable moment, he and Nesta grow closer physically, their bond tightening through their shared desire, shame, and care. Inspired by Gwen and Emery's bravery, Nesta agrees to scry for the trove. When she fails, she crashes back into self-loathing and isolation, triggering a nightmare tied to the cauldron that results in an uncontrollable burst of power, forcing Rhys to step in and help her, revealing the truth of her cauldron-made power in the process.
Hey there, we're a book talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
And we bring the tools of literary analysis to the women-written novels, lighting up book talk, from romance to romantasy. Think of it as your favorite fandom books, treated with the same respect you give a classic in literature class, just with more humor and less homework.
Each season, we dive into one book, breaking down themes, imagery, and character motivations. Together, we combine our 13 years of literary academic training with our fandom love to help you see your favorite books in a whole new way. We also analyze the story through 2 different literary lenses, sometimes more, giving you more than one way to look at the text.
This week, we're discussing A Court of Silver Flames, the most divisive book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. In this episode, we're covering chapters 25 through 30.
For a complete list of episodes and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Before we dive in, let's talk about Spilt. Spoilers, perspective, interpretation, language, themes.
Spoilers. This episode covers A Court of Silver Flames with full context from the preceding books in the ACOTAR series. That includes Thorns and Roses, Mist and Fury, Wings and Ruin, as well as Frost and Starlight. If you haven't read those, this is your only spoiler warning. We should also add a spoiler for SJM's Call Her Daddy interview, since that just took place.
Yep.
Anything in SJM's other series will be saved for our Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks episode that airs this Wednesday.
Perspective and interpretation. These are just our takes, our personal readings of the text. We don't speak for Sarah J. Maas, and we know you'll have your own interpretations too. We love hearing them, so share away.
Language. We use explicit language and we can't help ourselves. I promise we do try and we fail.
See, we do try. Themes. We will discuss tough topics like sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. We do our best to flag heavier moments where we can, but listener discretion is advised.
As always, let's keep the conversation going. Tag us, DM us, or use the submission form on our website. And if you want exclusive content and live streams, you'll find us over at patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk.
Can't get enough of analysis? Make sure to check out the Subtext Society Journal, where we write think pieces discussing the romance and romantasy genres as a whole, the ongoing conversations in the bookish community, and insights on the publishing world. Join us at the subtextsocietyjournal.substack.com.
Each week, we ask ourselves a question. This week, we're asking, what are Nesta's outlets and or inspirations in this section, and do these reflect a turning point in her development as a character?
Themes we see in this section include isolation and failure, as well as empathy. So this is going to be an interesting episode. The Call Her Daddy episode just aired, the podcast. So we're going to avoid larger Maasverse, but that podcast interview goes into play now.
Yes. And, we're going to be insufferable because it validates us.
Absolutely.
Now, I do fear the fact that maybe because our season hasn't started airing yet we're recording episode 5, I bet people start texting us or DMing us and leaving comments on episode 1 saying, well, in the SJM Call Her Daddy episode.
I swear.
And we'll be like, we record back in time.
Back in time. Okay, we record back in time. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. And I can't wait to have to say that to every single person.
Mentally prepare now.
Okay, I will respond.
I know.
Someone's listening to this 5 weeks later being like, they responded to me. We are at chapter 25, and we're at the start of part 2, and it's called Blade. You can look at this in many different ways, particularly that Nesta is a blade herself and she is sharpening her skills and she's becoming more deadly. That is for dang sure. So now we are at the training ring. Gwen just showed up. We love her, and we get this fantastic description of her. Quote, "In the sunlight, the color of her hair was extraordinary. Strands of gold glinting, and her teal eyes were a near perfect match to the stones the other priestesses wore." So I love this because it kind of shows that she's naturally good. She doesn't even need the stone to show she's good. Her eyes are the stone itself. And Nesta, we continue to point out, has a lot of religious imagery connected to her. And I'm seeing that also with Gwen. So maybe she's also connected to the mother, if Nesta's the cauldron.
Interesting.
Gwen has this moment when she prepares, kind of getting ready, and like this is like her walking outside being like, oh my God. And she hasn't been outside in years. And I want to look at how something is described because I'm going to come back to it later. Quote, "Gwen's hands were shaking as she took another step into the ring and peered into the open bowl of the sky." This isn't the first time that this sky in the training ring has been described as a bowl. Nesta's described that, I think, like at least one other time, maybe two other times. And I found it interesting because like a bowl is what you carry things in, right? You hold food, you hold water in there. And I guess you could say like, okay, a bowl gives strength and power, I suppose. And like the sky up ahead is like a good bowl and they're getting strength. But like later on, I will be coming back to this bowl situation.
I'm glad you brought up the bowl because bowls can also symbolize the divine feminine and fertility. Like if you think of the womb, it's like a bowl inside us. That sounds weird. I wanted to point this out because it sounds like it could also, in some ways, be associated with the mother, not just women mothers, but the god mother in the ACOTAR world.
It could also be linked to the Hollywood Bowl, and bowl season is real in LA.
Oh, man.
No one discusses bowl season enough. Gwen is ready to train, but she isn't dressed accordingly. She's there in her robes, and she looks at herself and says, quote, "I realized on the way up here that I don't have proper clothes." She gestured to her pale robes. "I suspect these will not be ideal." Cassian said without looking over, "I can teach you in robes if you wish. Whatever's more comfortable." Gwen offered him a tight smile. "I'll see how today's lessons go and then decide. We wear robes mostly from tradition, not strict rules." So I always love looking at clothes. I always like seeing what they represent. I mean, it is impossible even in everyday life for clothing not to represent something. Even if you're like, I am going out in the most like raggedy t-shirt and shorts, it's representative of something too. I'm sorry. And in this case, clothes are a marker of her readiness and her being prepared. But it's also the fact that it's her religious clothes that are restrictive. She has leaned more into being a priestess, into this religious setting, even though she thinks that she's not worthy of being a priestess, but they have become something for her to rely on and hide behind. It's also a fun fact that she chooses to wear these robes. These are not required of her. And eventually when she does open up and decides to wear leathers later, it's going to really show a progress. I mean, we saw that in Nesta and Wings and Ruin, right? Where she felt very uncomfortable wearing pants. And even at the beginning of this book, she was like, oh, I forgot how out my ass is with these things. But I also wanted to really hone into the religious element of it, and that sometimes clothing within religions can be a form of restriction or a form of comfort. And it can be used to hold back opportunities or a way of bringing comfort. It depends on the person. It depends on the religion, right? But that is the religious lens, yo.
So Jack has kind of touched on it, but I'm going to lean in a different direction, which is the psychoanalytical lens. We could argue that Gwen feels safest in the clothes of a priestess because it ties her to the library, which is where she's found sanctuary. And kind of going back to the religious lens, it reminds me of a nun in a convent. Right. However, from a psychoanalytical lens, continuing to wear the robes, even when she's exercising, indicates a preference on Gwen's part to remain hidden and in some ways to remain sheltered. She's stepping out into the world, seeing the sky for the first time in a long time. She needs to counterbalance that with something that keeps her safe. And like Jack said, right now, Gwyn is not ready to necessarily challenge herself and go out into the world beyond the House of Wind. So when she does shed the robes, when she does venture out into the world, it's huge markers of progress.
I think if there were more monks, monasteries, or convents that offered religious clothes as like jogger sweats and sweatshirt, you get more people lined up.
Yeah.
Gwyn is familiar with stretching and some of these warm-ups that Cassian has them doing because when she was at the temple, before it was attacked, that's what her and the other priestesses would do. Quote, "The movements took us out of our bodies in a way. Let us commune with the mother. The grounding settle us back into the present world." For Gwyn, this physical practice, this physical movement is both a spiritual practice and a way of protection. And does that mean the spiritual kind of becomes protection? Which I think it does, because you have a lot of like the mother involved, and you have Nesta, who is also protective, who is like very much associated with the mother, with religion here. Again, I think that we keep talking about Nesta being associated with religion, and yet Gwyn is too.
Yeah. And I just want to point out, like, what Gwyn's describing sounds a lot like yoga. And I think it's worth reminding all of us that Western culture has appropriated yoga. Yoga is an Eastern culture spiritual practice.
Yep.
And we've bastardized it into hot yoga, where come and sweat. And
Bikram yoga, and that guy ended up being a horrible predator asshole.
Yep.
So take that. Respect to Eastern culture.
Nesta works up the courage to ask Gwyn why she bothered to sign up for training, especially when Gwyn already has the tools to feel grounded. Remember, Nesta's extending this invite to the priestesses because Nesta herself has found mind-stilling and grounding techniques through training. So if Gwyn and other priestesses already have this, Nesta's probably like, well, shit. Maybe I'm contributing nothing.
Yeah.
Gwyn, in this instance, is willing to be vulnerable, despite her fear and despite still being clothed in her priestess's robes. Quote, "Because I don't ever want to feel powerless again," Gwyn said softly, and all those easy smiles and bright laughs were gone. Only stark, pained honesty shone in her remarkable eyes. Nesta swallowed, and though instinct told her to pull away, she said quietly, "Me too." Nesta is formulaic. If someone is vulnerable with her, she can be vulnerable too. She can also relate to them. And we saw this with Rhys and Feyre, and we see it in Nesta as well. And it's quid pro quo. And quite frankly, I think it's also what makes character interactions believable in storytelling, is this idea of quid pro quo and the exchange.
I mean, it's also Nesta's opening up her vulnerability now, and then Cassian's going to be vulnerable later. So then she makes herself physically vulnerable. You know, she definitely resonates with vulnerability. A lot of people do. I find that when you approach someone with vulnerability, they're pretty receptive to it, which is why I'm not a great character in a book, because I would just like come in hot.
Yeah.
Nesta goes to Windhaven and sees her other new bestie, Emery. And as she's walking around there, she thinks, quote, "Valaris was still gripped in Summer's hand, Autumn just barely tugging it away. But Windhaven had already yielded completely to Winter's embrace. Nature is physical. And not just physical, it reminds me of a mother and a child, right? Like it's a winter, Windhaven has yielded to Winter's embrace. It's very mother and child imagery in my mind. Some people might interpret that more as romantic, and that's your right. And you can interpret it however you want. And then later on, she's going to smell autumn, like autumn spices. And you can see that there's a shift happening, right? So autumn here in Windhaven has started, or actually it's winter, but change hasn't shifted in Valaris yet. Later on, change will happen, and Nesta will change as well.
Because, like in Gothic literature, weather reflects interiority. I did also highlight this quote because I just thought it was beautiful writing. And when I was reading your note, Jack, about how it reminds you of a mother with their child, I would like to think, and I don't know if this is the case, but all this nurturing imagery that we're getting, the bowl, this weather, I think it underscores the presence of like a guiding hand, aka the mother, since she will ultimately have a role in this novel, and she is going to be influential on Nesta or have influence on Nesta. So I like to think that through Nesta's eyes, we see a lot of that nurturing, maybe because she's never had it and has always wanted it.
Yeah.
Now, when Nesta gets to Emery's shop, Emery's cousin Bellius is there giving her a hard time. And while interacting with him, Nesta comes to understand something. And that is that humans and Fae have more in common than she may have previously been willing to admit. Quote, how many times had she witnessed her father's debtors darkening their doorstep to shake him down for money he didn't have? And then there had been the time when they had gone beyond threats, when they'd left her father's leg shattered, any sense of safety shattered with it. I just noticed the alliteration while I was speaking, and I was like, oh, it sounds like someone knocking on a door.
Yeah.
Debtors darkening doorstep down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a nice little added touch.
Mm-hmm.
Intentional or not, doesn't matter. What's important to me in this quote, though, is that it has a very revealing sentiment that the actions of Nesta's father, of Papa Archeron, and the consequences of those actions are ultimately what robbed her of her feelings of safety. She felt safe up until the debtors broke her father's leg. And the debtors broke her father's leg because he was in debt. Maybe she has never felt safe since then. You could argue Feyre has felt safe more frequently than Nesta has. And so Nesta is at a disadvantage if she's never felt safe since the age of 14 or however old she was at the time. And I'll be honest, I think that seems like a very convincing reason for Nesta to spite her father, to hate him, because he is the reason she does not feel safe.
That's such a good point. Like, Nesta has not felt safe. Feyre found a home. And when you have not found a home and you are very aware of the fact that you can be thrown out at any given point, Nesta feels safe in the sense that she is confident no one's going to go and attack her. Everyone knows who she is. There's that level of safety, but safety can also mean where you're at in your life. If people value you, if people respect you, want to be with you, you feel like you're not bringing anything. So I think that's a really good point, that her lack of safety and her feeling unsafe has shifted over the years, but has never gone away one way or another. That's a good point.
Thank you.
What adds another layer to Nesta's growth and journey is her having to unpack her relationships with other women specifically. Quote, Nesta had been 7 when the stern-faced dame who had insisted on being called Grandmama had beaten her palms raw with a ruler for missteps in her dance lessons. Worthless, clumsy girl, you're a waste of my time. Maybe this will help you remember to pay attention to my orders. Nesta was not set up for success. Her female relationships, she was taught to have very unhealthy female relationships with her mother, with her grandmother, even the way that her mom talked about her siblings. With, you know, her sisters, like very much dismissing them. Yep. Nesta, like everything was working against her. And that's why her path of finding female friendship, I find to be almost more meaningful, because she's had more to work through.
Exactly. I think this is such a great point. I think anybody's relationship with their mother and grandmother influences and informs their relationships with women, and including sisters. And Nesta being critical and cruel of her sisters, because that's how she's being with Elaine right now, because she feels betrayed. And she's always been with Feyre. It's kind of the only form of familial female love she knows. And after so many years and so much trauma, it's really hard to wipe the slate clean and start over with them. And I know people get frustrated with Nesta for not like working on the relationship with her sisters to the extent she works on a relationship with Gwen and Emery. Anybody is going to choose the path of least resistance. It doesn't matter who you are. And starting fresh with new people who don't know your history is the path of least resistance, compared to, I have 25 years of trauma with my sisters that I can't undo.
That's the thing. People talk about it like they're her sisters. She's never had a normal relationship with her sisters. Her mother taught her that her sisters are not as valuable as her, that they're, you know, someone to be dismissed. Then they become poor and Farrah kind of takes up the mantle, and there's resentment, and then Farrah's kind of in charge. And Nesta's obsession with Elaine is very much not because of her love, but because this is someone that she can look after, right? This is the one thing she can control, and that's her protection of Elaine. So it's not even a matter of like, I love her more, which I think she does, but you know, there's reasons. And it's never been a normal relationship with her sisters. She's at negative points with her sisters. Emery and Gwen, you're starting at, you know, ground zero. You can build up. Her and her sisters have a long way to go before they're even neutral with one another.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, Nesta, I don't know that treats is the right word, but in some ways views Elaine as a possession the way her grandmother and her mother viewed her as a possession.
Yep.
And again, it's about control. And it doesn't help that from what we know of Nesta's female friendships before they were poor were also toxic.
Yeah.
It was also competitive.
Yep.
Nesta's really starting way behind the start line of what it means to be.
Yeah. And then the fact that she's so concerned of the priestesses and wanting to get them out. Like, she is kind. She is a girl's girl, just not a sister.
Yeah. Now, while she thinks back on her grandmother and her mother, Nesta admits to herself that, quote, Nesta had only left flowers for her mother, whose grave she had visited more often than she cared to admit. Now, we know from Nesta's point of view that her mother was a monster, and Nesta views her mother as a monster because Nesta is her mother's creature. However, even in that toxic state, that was the parent and the family member she felt loved by and was possessed by. And so she can't help but miss that connection despite the toxicity. Because all we want is to belong. All we want is to be connected, really, at the end of the day. We also get a throwaway comment following this that's, quote, she hadn't once visited her father's grave outside Valaris. Just a little breadcrumb for why the ending scene of this book is at the father's grave and why it's important.
Yep. The only person who ever made Nesta feel valuable and like someone with value is her mother. Now, I'm sure Elaine in her way made her feel important. But again, that was such a level of codependency on both their parts that it's hard to say that Nesta felt true value and wasn't just like another person to be taking care of Elaine.
Yeah.
So we get a peek behind the curtain at how Nesta handled their poverty. Just as a reminder, Nesta was just as starved as Farrah. Remember earlier in this book when Farrah was painting her bones? Nesta had the same starved bones. The same way that Cassian said hunger can change a person and we have empathy for Farrah is the same way that Nesta also starved. I mean, Farrah did the hard work. Don't get me wrong. They all starved. They all have that food insecurity. Quote, Nesta had told herself that day that Thomas would take her in if necessary. Maybe even Elaine too. But his family had been hateful, with too many mouths to feed already. His father would have refused to feed her without question. She'd been prepared to offer the only thing she had to barter to Thomas, if it would keep Elaine from starving, would have sold her body on the street to anyone who pay her enough to feed her sister. Her body had meant nothing to her, nothing. She told herself as she felt her options closing in. Elaine meant everything. So again, this is this hyper focus on Elaine, that Elaine meant everything, that she needs to do everything for Elaine. And I get it. She's not talking about Farrah here. Like, I see the lack of concern for Farrah. Farrah was feeding herself. It's not an excuse. I'm not saying that this is good. I think that it makes me frustrated for her. But even Farrah at the time would, like, her happy moment was marry my sisters off, have a little bit of paint, and just hang with my dad all day. Like, that was her dream. And it kind of mirrors it, right? I also want to point out that Nesta already started to view her body as something to be sold. And it is similar to how her mother viewed it too. Like, you're going to marry a prince. Like, you're going to be worth more. She has always been a commodity. This time it was out of desperation. And, you know, our poor girl, like, it does show the desperation that was in her head.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see how she continues to let herself be used as a commodity throughout this book, because she does. And it isn't good or bad, but she's already accustomed to it.
To make Cassian feel better, she goes down on him. And I'm not saying that's bad. I have done this move as well. I think that sex is a great emotional connection. This is not me condemning it. I think it was a very sweet romantic moment, even as he unleashed himself upon her mouth, right? it's still something that she understands to give, right?
Yeah. Now, what really struck me during this kind of flashback or this memory is what Thomas says to Nesta when she denies him access to her body. Quote, "You think you're better than me, acting like a queen when you haven't got shit." At least Nesta's viewed consistently, good or bad.
Yeah.
And remember, this is what her mother brought her up to be, a princess who would one day marry a prince. She would not settle for less. Cassian loves the way Nesta holds herself like a queen. Thomas demeans her for holding herself as a queen. And that's just another indication of just how good Cassian is. And just one more little point about this memory with Thomas is that when Nesta fights, she fights with the primalness of a fae. And she was human during this. Quote, "Only pure, undiluted terror and survival instinct had saved her. She'd let him get close, let him think her strength had failed, and then clamped her teeth down on his ear and ripped." That is vicious.
Yeah.
I will remember this if I'm ever in a situation where I need it.
You and I were talking about it last night.
Word.
We have the routine. What do?
Smash his hands.
After you kick him in the balls, grab his face, shove his face to the ground, smash his
break
hands.
His nose,
break
smash
his nose.
his hands, smash his kneecaps.
They can't grab you if you've smashed their hands. So, if you get them to the ground once, just use your heel and just smash in their hand.
We're here to teach.
Yeah. Time for a bargain with our sponsors.
Earlier this spring, my mom and I refinanced her mortgage, and it made me realize I really need to simplify my finances. And I can do that with Monarch.
Let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. Monarch has one dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more scattered logins. Just accounts, investments, property, and more all in one place.
Get your first year of Monarch for half off. That's just $50 with promo code BookTalk. BOOKTALK.
Monarch has helped me every single month when it reports back on how much I'm actually spending on things like apps.
I love the cash flow visualization tool because I didn't realize how much money I was spending on acai.
One of my favorite things about Monarch is the weekly AI recap that catches the spending spike before it becomes a problem.
It's like having a financial advisor in your pocket. Anytime you want, you can ask it things like, how has my spending changed lately? Or am I on track to hit my savings goal?
The best thing that Monarch does is it helps you split the bills. Scan a receipt and Monarch splits up the items and prices prices them automatically. Then share a link or QR code with your group so everyone can claim their item and settle up. No more calculator apps.
Use code BookTalk at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50.
That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code BookTalk. BOOKTALK. I want to continue to add to the complexity of Nesta, and this quote that I'm about to read is after Pharaoh was taken by Tamlin, and suddenly her and her family get a bunch of wealth back to them. Quote, "Nesta knew it was a lie. The trunks of jewels and gold had not come from that doomed ship, but from Tamlin, payment for the human woman he'd stolen away. To help the family he doomed to die without Farah's hunting." This is a moment where, of course she would feel gratitude to Tamlin, but Tamlin is also the one who took her sister, but then her sister ended up loving him, but then that's also the one who took her and then helped turn her into Fae. So her relationship with Tamlin is quite complicated within itself. I never really sat there and thought about it. And this is also book 5 with Nesta. Arguably, she is far more complex of an FMC than a lot of other FMCs are at the start of a series. And that's not to shit on other FMCs. It's just the fact that this is the 5th book that we are with Nesta. There is so much history. You start a book off, there's lore before the story even picks up. And we have 4 previous books. So when we talk about the complexity and the richness of Nesta as a character, it's because there's been work to this point. There's been history to this point.
And the readers have context from a different perspective. And now we're getting different context.
Yep.
Emery invites Nesta to eat lunch with her once Bellius is gone. And for a moment, Nesta is hesitant. Quote, having lunch with Emery was an indulgence. It was only a matter of time until the female learned more about Nesta, until she had heard every horrible thing, and then the invitations would stop. Had she been any better than Bellius, drunk and simmering with hatred for months? If Emery knew, she'd kick her out of this shop too. But for now, neither rumor nor truth had reached Emery. I would like that, Nesta said, and meant it. I wanted to pause and reflect on this quote because this is, I think, maybe among the first times Nesta really realizes the ugliness of what she was doing to herself and realizes the harm it can do to other people. She's not reflecting on the inner circle or her sisters, but she can see how her actions reflected in Bellius would impact someone like Emery.
Yeah.
And she projects onto Emery and others that they would do to Nesta what Feyre in the inner circle did to her, which is kick her out of her home, right? And Nesta doesn't want a repeat of that. She wants genuine connection. The fact that she's willing to quote unquote indulge in having lunch with Emery, of forming connection to Nesta, that seems selfish. She feels selfish for wanting that contact, to sit, to chat, to develop a connection, to share food.
Yeah.
Really? That is how much Nesta still hates herself and feels that she's undeserving. And that's tragic.
It's true. She never gives Emery and Gwen a moment to, like, metaphorical throw her out. She's gone too far. Like, when she gets a fresh start, she really goes with a fresh start. So there's a lot of reflection happening at this time, and particularly when she was younger, like young Nesta's relationship with young Feyre continues to fascinate me. Quote, Feyre had loved to hang about their father's office, more fascinated in the trade than what Nesta had been taught was acceptable for a wealthy girl. Feyre had always been that way, completely uninterested in the rules that governed their lives, uninterested in becoming a true lady who would help advance their family's fortune through an advantageous marriage. It sounds frivolous. It sounds like, God, you're not even focused on, marrying a rich man. But what is it that she says? To help advance their family's fortune. Nesta selling herself off is for the good of the family. And she's looking at Feyre as like, you get to pretend like you're living your life where you don't have to do this. You know what I mean? Like, this is Nesta's fate. Of course, it's like, why do I have to do this? And the other ones can't do this. Like, you need to focus on it too. And there's a lot of envy. Nesta, I feel like, admired Feyre for never having an interest in being a lady and never had to. Before Feyre had to be forced to, go through these lady lessons, they were thrown out. And Feyre got to become more herself. Now, Feyre went through trauma. Feyre had to support the family. Feyre did not have like this easy breezy, like, and now I'm going to come into who I am. But Feyre, as an adult and since becoming Fae, has gotten to live her life much more on her terms in a way that Nesta, I think, admires. Again, Feyre is living the life that Nesta's supposed to live. Like, she did go and have an advantageous marriage.
I know. The irony of the fact she would never become a true lady and help their family's fortune through an advantageous marriage. That's exactly what Feyre ended up doing. Not with intent. It just so happened that way. But I can see how that would really irk Nesta. Nesta was poised and meant to marry a prince. Then she's in a crappy apartment drinking and sleeping her way through Valaris. Feyre was wild and unruly and ended up a high lady of the most powerful and richest Fae male in Prythian.
Yeah.
That's got to be hard. That's like a major role reversal for Nesta and what she understood life to be about.
Yep.
And what her outcomes would be. Like Jack said, it is exacerbated by the fact that Feyre took responsibility for the family, even though she was the youngest child, even though she was never taught to do that, where Nesta was. This makes Nesta so complicated, but so relatable as well. And I do love that this whole concept is underscored by Emery's comment, quote, I always forget how similar human ideas of propriety are to the Illyrians. Another thing of irony, what humans deem as class, sophistication, civility is what the High Fae think of as brutish and backward. And of course, Feyre, who was never taught to be civil, fits in. And Nesta, who was taught to be the human equivalent of civility, doesn't. And quite frankly, matches Cassian's energy. And that's why he likes her so much.
It's also funny because the High Fae conveniently forget that there was this concept of ownership of the females the second that they're engaged or married, and that only a mate bond can break a contract, essentially. They like to forget that.
They do. They do. They like to think they're liberal, but they're not.
No.
Now, as we've discussed before, Nesta projects herself onto Emery and Gwyn because they have trauma, even if that trauma is different. What's nice, though, is that she recognizes that. Like, we're seeing Nesta gain awareness. Quote, Emery's wings, her horrible family, were not the same as what Gwyn had endured, but everyone's trauma were different masks. Now, like the priestesses, Nesta wants to help Emery because Nesta sees herself in Emery. And she's even willing to do something so unpleasant, like ask for help, including from her brother-in-law. Quote, Nesta didn't know who, but if she had to ask Rhys himself, she would. And to a point Jack made earlier, this is showing signs of goodness and selflessness in Nesta. For those she loves or those she sees herself in, she's able to do good things.
Yeah.
While I was taking my notes, I was like, oh, this is also why Nesta favors Elaine. Elaine was brought up with the same education. Therefore, Nesta sees more of herself in Elaine than she does in Feyre.
Yeah. Elaine's also easier to not envy. Yeah. And funny enough, that's not me trying to make a dig out of Elaine when, trust me, I love to. But genuinely, there's nothing about Elaine that is enviable for two women like Feyre and Nesta who are driven.
Yeah.
Take a sip. So now we are in chapter 26. Nesta and Cassian are both back at the House of Wind, and Cassian is brooding because he had some meetings and it didn't go well. Quote, Cassian was lounging in his chair, a glass of wine in his hand, staring at nothing, a brooding warrior prince, contemplating the death of his enemies. I love that they both see each other as royalty, right? Because Cassian walked in on Nesta brooding, and she was a queen on a quilted chair. Nesta sees Cassian the same way. Like, he is brooding and pensive, and he is royalty. They're a good match.
They are a good match. I think it's also a nice little, in some ways, breadcrumb because it harkens back to Nesta's upbringing. Her mother tells her she's going to marry a prince. Nesta sees Cassian as a prince. So her mom's not wrong.
Yep.
Nesta doesn't see Cassian as beneath her because she sees him just as elevated as she was brought up to be.
Yeah, which is great. From what I remember, she calls him a
bastard brute.
A bastard brute. She doesn't really call him a bastard. She just calls him a brute.
Yeah, maybe Cassian adds the bastard. I can't remember.
He does. From what I remember, watch the next line we're going to read. It's going to have it. But from what I remember, she doesn't throw in the way he was born into it.
Now, when we read this scene, I feel like a door has been opened within Nesta because she's really allowing herself to start worrying about people, right? First it was the priestesses, then Gwyn, then Emery, and now she's showing genuine concern for Cassian. She is bothered by the fact that he's brooding and not eating because he always eats. He always eats more than her, but he can't be bothered. Quote, it bothered her more than it should have. Bothered her enough that she asked, quote, what happened? She made herself eat more, acting as casual as possible, trying to coax him into opening up. It's a nice little role reversal for the two of them. Nesta's the one eating, Cassian's not. We've seen the opposite many times before. And in some ways, if we're looking at this through a power lens, Nesta's got control. And what does she have control of? She has control of herself. Right now, she has control of her emotions and her self-hatred. But Cassian does not have control of his emotions or his self-hatred. And Nesta's just not okay with that. Now, what has Cassian so down? It comes down to Eris and the way that he treats Cassian. Because Cassian feels like he will never measure up. And lucky for him, he's willing to be vulnerable, which is Nesta's kryptonite.
It really is.
It really is.
She's like, not my baby boy.
Quote, every time I meet with him, I feel like he's got the upper hand. Like I can only catch up to him, and he sees through my every fumbling attempt at being clever. Maybe that makes me a stupid brute after all. This is another example of how similar Cassian and Nesta are. He's comparing himself to Eris the way that Nesta compares herself to her sisters. Cassian is just as capable of self-doubt and shame over who he is, just like Nesta. And that doesn't sit right with Nesta because she views him as so much better than her. She views him as a prince. He's a warrior god. He's a warrior prince. Like, he's good. These are things that Nesta is not. And so for him to doubt himself, she's like, nope, let's get you out of that funk.
Yeah. With my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
What makes Cassian and Nesta compelling, what makes them interesting, is how they counter one another. Nesta thinks, quote, Cassian was good in his soul, in his warrior heart. Cassian was good in a way Nesta knew most people were not, in a way she knew she was not and would never be. Unlike the way Nesta judges Farah for being good, right? Because it is a bit of a judgment that she gives to Farah. Nesta admires Cassian for this trait, and she finds it to be far more authentic from him. Cassian and the way she views him is just different, and it's something to be preserved. It's something that's admirable, and I love the way they counter it. And I don't think Cassian views Nesta as like, you're a wicked witch and I like you for that. But I feel like this is a good counter moment. And to make him feel better, she's like, hey, I got you. I'm going to suck you off now. And honestly, it's a hot scene. 10 out of 10. Would like more, please.
Even I, as someone who does not like penis, enjoyed it.
I mean, and she goes into detail. When I forgot how much detail she goes into this one, because when she was like, licked the slit, and I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
The penis head slit. You're talking about it.
We're going there.
Yeah.
Before we get into the action of the sex, I think it's important to note what Nesta thinks before she decides to go down on Cassian. She herself feels shame for making Cassian doubt himself in the past and having called him vile things, just like Eris. Quote, she couldn't abide the pain in his eyes, teetering on the brink of despair. Couldn't stand the absence of the grinning and winking and swaggering she knew so well. She'd do anything to get rid of that look in his eyes, even for a few moments. What is interesting is that Nesta never truly apologizes for calling Cassian names in anger. But this act of sex is in many ways her apology. And that's because it's the only language these two know how to share. Right now, they're being vulnerable, but maybe this is a little too vulnerable. So let's switch to something that's a little more comfortable. Now, Jack and I are going to highlight some specific moments from the scene. We're going to do different ones because remember, like SJM said herself, sex, character development, and plot are all intertwined. It does not diminish the text.
Yep.
First, I love the fact that Nesta starts out really confident and sure of her decision to take care of Cassian. Quote, her fingers were steady, sure as she unfastened his pants, her head wholly clear. But then when she pulls out his cock, quote, her fingers shook a little. Trembling hands, like we see a lot where Nesta observed Cassian's hands trembling or her own hands trembling and vice versa. And it's a signal that SJM does use with her characters without having to tell us what the emotion actually is.
Yep.
Also, when she grabs him, quote, he was hard as steel beneath. Who else gets called steel? Nesta. You know, consistent imagery between Nesta and Cassian, even in sex.
Yeah. I wish there was more representation of women not swallowing cum. I just feel like every single time they just shoot down, like, because Cassian's like, I'm going to come. I want to, like, let me fuck you. And then she's like, no, you can come in my mouth, which, like, okay, yes. However, they just, like, throw it back. As someone who's clearly have never done any of this, I'd be innocent, but, like, I wouldn't know, obviously. No, not at all. Not this one on this podcast. So there's two moments during the scene I want to highlight. The first, quote, she weathered him when he stopped shuddering. She smoothly, gracefully slid her mouth off him. It's the weather that I want to point out. Just like he weathers her and he talks about whatever she throws at him, he can take. She weathers him too. Like they're both very much attached to nature and the elements. They are both forces that are beyond, right? It's interesting because like Reese is like night and strength. Cassian and Nesta are this like harsh weather, like they just collide with each other, right? Like it just is hot and heavy, arguments and everything. It's just like two storms clashing.
Right.
Is Elaine going to be like a plant with another plant?
We'll see.
My general note for this all-around scene, and I'm going to pull from this quote. Nesta held his stare while she swallowed down every ounce of what he'd spilled into her mouth, and then her lips curved upwards, a queen triumphant. Sex is food, food is power. Like, this is just straight up in your face or in your mouth in Nesta's case. And again, I wouldn't know, but, some might say it's not fun. Not that the act is fine from what I've heard, but like the results itself are an odd texture, according to the text.
In my notes, she's in charge and eating her lunch. Luckily, queer women don't have that problem. There is more than just the release at the end of this sexual activity that is equated to food. The whole act is really Nesta feasting. And I just want to go back and describe some of these because Nesta enjoys this. Like, she has been a starving woman and she has found her oasis of food.
Yeah.
She is just like, I am where I'm meant to be. When Cassian starts panting, quote, the words, the groan they were born on were so delicious that Nesta sucked his tip into her mouth. I'll stop.
Keep
there.
reading.
And grazed her tongue along its underside. She's like a starving animal, which, by the way, Cassian was also equated to a starving animal when he went down on her.
Yeah.
Nesta is, quote, desperate for as much of him in her mouth as could fit. I mean, it's like a hot dog eating contest.
I know. They're just fun. Like,
yeah. It's kind of like boobs and how they have their own physics.
Yeah, kind of. I was going to say something. The day that I learned that they can still be hard and still like bend down that way, like bend opposite, because like movies and everything just always taught me like when they're hard, it just goes straight up. And then I was like, wait, you can be hard and like change it up like a stick shift, Like I can change gears here. Like, holy shit. According to books.
Said the ancient texts.
Yeah. Of my diary.
Take a sip.
Take a sip. All right. So now we're in chapter 27.
And it's the next day, and Nesta is recalling her feast of Cassian. Quote, the taste of him lingered in her mouth as if he branded himself on her tongue. I really enjoy this quote because in the moment, Nesta was the one with power. She's the one feasting. She's the one in control. She's the one who initiates. But on the flip side, in the aftermath, she's the one who is branded, which is the opposite of power. It is subservient. It is about ownership and claiming. And in a lot of ways, I think Nesta didn't realize the consequences of her action, which is in a lot of ways sealing her fate of being with him and being his.
Yeah.
And he being hers.
Nesta is trying to figure out how to get the other priestesses to join the training, and she feels bad. Like, she wants to get them to join, and not just them, but Emery as well. The more, the merrier here. And she has this moment where she gets an idea on like how to maybe tempt Emery to join them. Quote, a brisk autumn breeze flowed past, bringing with it scents from the city below, bread and cinnamon and oranges, roast meats and salt. Nesta inhaled, identifying each one, wondering how they could all somehow combine to create a singular sense of autumn. And then you could hear Taylor Swift's Red album in the background, and you know it's autumn. I find the richness of flavor to be very humanizing. I think that a lot of cultures, mine included, and Chile and in other cultures, food brings people together. Food is not meant to be something that is consumed and disregarded. You sit there at the dinner table and you eat for a very long time. And of course, that would be the thing that helps inspires Nesta to bribe Emery there.
Yeah. Everybody can be bought with food.
So true.
At Nesta's request, Cassian takes spices up to Emery, and he reflects on Nesta's, I wrote burgeoning. Did I use that correctly? Define burgeoning.
Burgeoning?
Burgeoning.
I know, but are
grow,
you trying to say
No, it's burgeoning is beginning to grow. I did use it correctly. Their burgeoning relationship. So their beginning to grow relationship with Gwen and the shopkeeper.
But is there another word of virgining? Is it burgeoning this entire time?
Burgeoning.
This entire time.
You thought it was virgining?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Burgeoning.
It's just another instance of blaming my family.
Spanish was your first language.
I was not raised by English speakers.
It doesn't help that you and I do so much audiobook listening rather than physical reading, right? Because you would be able to correct it more through physical reading, because this is a word we hear.
Many years to physically read and still missed out on it. So
no, I agree. But like, this is a word we hear a lot in romantasy books.
Yeah.
Burgeoning. But if I'm not physically reading the book, how am I supposed to know how to spell it? How am I supposed to, right?
You know, I hope that there's another listener out there that is very much identifying it. It's spelled Burgeoning.
Rhymes with surgeon. Virgin.
All right, you can continue. I just learned something today. I'm kind of sad, but I'm happy.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I have a master's degree. I'm going to just go hold it while I fall asleep tonight and cry.
Headphones almost fell off.
I'm happy I was able to get you to laugh for that one.
All right. Cassian reflects on Nesta's burgeoning relationship with Gwyn and Emery. Quote, Nesta around Gwyn was a wholly different creature than who she was with the court. They didn't tease or laugh with each other, but an easiness lay between them that he'd never witnessed, even when Nesta was with Elaine. She'd always been Elaine's guardian, or favorite sister, or cauldron maid. With Gwyn, he wondered whether Nesta liked the girl because with her, she was simply Nesta. Perhaps she felt that way around Emery, too. I just love that Cassian sees what we see. And it, again, just speaks to his goodness, because how many men don't notice this stuff? How many people don't notice this stuff if they don't care about you, right? Someone who really cares about you is invested in the relationships you have with other people.
Yeah.
Because they want you to have those healthy relationships.
Yep.
And this is just an example of Cassian's goodness, and that he's aware that Nesta's connecting with Gwyn and Emery in a very unique way that she can't get anywhere else right now.
And Nesta's bribery works. Emery shows up, quote, and before them, drinking a glass at the water station, stood Emery. Food is bribery, because it's power. But rather than food, it's more about the exchange of potential vulnerability. Nesta is being vulnerable by reaching out, and hopefully she will be met with Emery's vulnerability back at her.
And I think there's something really special about hearing someone say something as insignificant as spices.
Yeah.
And you being like, I can provide that, but that meaning the world to them.
I think it's just like thinking about someone. Like when you bring, it doesn't have to be about big gifts. It's just about like something where it's like, oh, I thought of you and I knew you'd like this.
Yep, exactly.
I feel like I do that sometimes.
Yeah, no, you're very good at it.
Thank you.
You're better at it than I am.
You bring other qualities to our friendship, like telling me how to spell things.
It's an even exchange.
Yep, it is. Burgeoning. I stopped saying the word irked. I stopped saying it because I don't know which one anymore. But I do say edamame correctly now.
You do. I'm so proud of you. You can get irked. You can master the irk one day.
One day. I just don't know which one it is. Okay, so now we're in chapter 28, and our trio, Emery, Gwyn, and Nesta, are all together for the first time, and they're getting to know each other and their scars, metaphorical and physical. Quote, Emery stretched out her right wing nearly all the way before it bunched and shuddered. So did Emery's face. I can't extend this one past here. I mean, some scars are visible and others not so much. Like Emery's is very much on display, but when you have Nesta or Gwyn, it's very much below the surface. Although Emery has them below the surface, but you can tell it's there because of the wing. However, it's just like my left arm. I can't extend it all the way.
That's right. Cassian is pissed at Emery's dead father on her behalf because of her quote-unquote disability, essentially, because of the trauma that's been done to her body. And quite frankly, Nesta thinks his anger is hot. Quote, siphons glared in answer, and something wild and wicked heated in Nesta's blood at the pure rage in his face, his growling words. I'm going to take a psychoanalytical lens approach to this. Now, remember, Nesta projects herself onto the people around her, especially Gwyn and Emery. She sees herself in them. She's not jealous of the fact that Cassian is protective and vengeful on Emery's behalf. In fact, she finds it hot. And that's because if Nesta identifies with Emery and sees herself, therefore Nesta is Emery, then Cassian being vengeful on Emery's behalf is to be vengeful on Nesta's behalf as well. And she loves that animalistic side of him because ultimately they're both just animals and they want to be animals together.
I'm sure it's hot to be like, ooh, you care about my friends. Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Hell yeah. We interrupt our own genius for a quick message. Struggling to find the right metabolic wellness support, even when you're doing everything right, has been one of the most frustrating things for me in my health journey.
I've tried other metabolic wellness support providers, and I often feel rejected rather than supported by the process.
That's because Brello is focused on long-term health, longevity, and performance, not quick fixes.
Brello is designed for people who want a more sustainable approach to their metabolic wellness support. Their support helps you focus on habits, education, and structure alongside provider oversight.
Getting my GLP-1 through Brello has been so easy. They make it so effortless, and they provide all the support I need through their app.
Their app is one of a kind in my book because it allows you to track progress, manage reminders, and stay on top of renewals. And if you're like me, managing the renewals is the hardest part.
Everything is managed online, making it easier to stay consistent over time, and medications are delivered to your door. They're so transparent with their pricing with one flat monthly cost. Go to BrelloHealth.com to see if you qualify and explore their GLP-1 plans, starting at $133 per month for your first 3 months, plus access to their app, community, and wellness classes. That's BRELLO health.com.
Any information provided is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional medical consultation, diagnosis, or treatment. All patients must consult with a healthcare provider prior to the prescription or dispensing of any medication, which will be done only pursuant to a valid prescription. Compounded drug products are not FDA approved, and the FDA does not evaluate their safety, effectiveness, or quality. Patients are encouraged to discuss the risks, benefits, and appropriateness of any medications, including compounded products, with their healthcare provider before use. I have the most complicated period ritual just to make sure that I am comfortable and I don't have any accidents. And at the end of the day, I'm not comfortable and I still have accidents. I am so happy that I have finally made the jump to Nix because I can sleep so much easier when I'm on my period now with their leak-proof underwear. Nix, that's KNIX, has completely changed how I feel about my period. Their leak-proof technology not only looks and feels like regular underwear, but it washes like regular underwear, and they have a range of absorbencies because if you're like me, my period keeps changing. The heavier days are heavier and shorter, and I don't know what to expect. With up to 6 super tampons worth of absorption, I'm totally covered. Plus, Nix has patent-bonded edges to prevent side leaks. We all know about those dreaded side leaks. They are the bane of my existence. Their underwear is buttery soft, stretchy fabric and cuts like thong, bikini, boy shorts, high rise, and more. Their thong has seriously changed everything. I wear that on my last day of the period where I just need something for the gym. Pad doesn't feel comfortable. Tampons don't feel comfortable. Nix, game changer. I swear by their boy shorts for overnight on heavy nights. I even wore those boy shorts under my dress during my engagement photo shoot. They were lifesavers. Head to Nix.com and you'll see why we love Nix. Use code BOOKTALK, that's BOOKTALK, for 15% off your order. Get leak-proof undies, amazing bras, and more. That's KNIX.com using code BOOKTALK, BOOKTALK, Nix.com. So in SJM's interview with Call Her Daddy, like Amy mentioned earlier, she talks about sex and the fact that people diminish it and that it's just a natural part of life, especially the fact that it's not just natural between partners, it's also natural for friends to talk about it. And I think that this book also brings a glimpse behind that value as well. So this is where the 3 of the new friends are talking. Quote, "Smut?" Gwen asked, catching Cassian's muttered words. "I can bring one of Drake's books for you, too.
one of her milder ones. An introduction to the wonders of romance. Emery winked at Nesta. Sex can bring community in a way, you know what I mean? Like it brings women and men and friends together to talk about it. The more you talk about sex, the less stigma it has around it. And I think there's like plenty of questions when you don't know like what's happening. I'm going to confess something to you, listener. I have had sex before. I know I've hit it well. But I am someone who has had sex, and this is my truth. And I have very clear memories of not knowing something and not knowing who to talk to about it and being too afraid to talk to my mom about it. So I think like, you know, when you have friends, it's so important. And I think that smut and books brings that together and we can all talk about it, except for the fact none of the books are talking about sometimes. It's just like, it's warm and viscous. I don't think that anyone who might have sensory issues may not like the texture or the taste. Again, I have had sex. Nesta and Rhys will always butt heads. They're always going to be at it. And this is a truth. And sometimes it's freaking hilarious. Quote. So at this point, Rhys is at the training rink, right? And quote, Rhys's gaze slid between them being Nesta and Cassian. Little warmth to be found in his eyes, but plenty of wariness. Little Princeling didn't like her with his friend. Nesta leaned into Cassian. So at this point, Nesta's talking to Rhys. Cassian comes over, throws an arm around Nesta, and Nesta's like, ew, you're sweaty, but also kind of hot. And then Rhys is like not a fan of it, so she leans into him. And it's a form of ownership and claiming. And eventually, I can't wait to see what their dynamic is when Nesta is very much like that's her mate because they value the mating bond. And who does Cassian report to? His mate or his High Lord?
Yeah.
He is in a very stuck in the middle situation.
Yep.
There are moments with Rhys, though, that I do see where it makes him look bad. But remember, we're in Nesta's point of view. So, of course, it's bad in her point of view. And at this point, he's in her mind. He kind of nudges and she lets him in. And he tells her in his mind, quote, you are to treat Gwen with kindness and respect. When we read this, we're angry for Nesta. We sit there and we go, what the hell? Like, she has fought to bring these priestesses in. She's been nothing but kind. She's been supportive. I mean, like, there's been some initial tensions at the beginning, but she's making friends. We are in Nesta's point of view. We need to remember Rhys's point of view. Nesta has been a bitch. Through and through.
To her sisters.
To her sisters. Of course he would assume that she could potentially be a bitch to them too. Like, Nesta has never proven kindness to anyone wholly. There is not a single person in her life that you could say she has been wholly kind to. So of course Rhys is going to be concerned about that. And then it goes back to just being like freaking funny because like at their core, Nesta and Rhys are the most like pure form of brother and sister-in-law of like the trope of like they don't really like each other.
Yep.
Especially like this line from Nesta, quote, no, she just found his personality, that slick smugness, grating. I think it's funny.
I totally get it.
Do you know someone like that? Is it me?
In my in-laws?
Oh no, just like slick grating, like their smugness.
My in-laws? An in-law?
Okay. So like thinking of Emma's family, I was like, her father is a precious man. Is as someone who's never met him before.
He is precious. I'm thinking on the other side. Now, despite all of this, despite their animosity towards each other, despite how grating Nesta finds Rhys and how presumptuous Rhys is, Nesta still thinks of Rhys as a good male. And it's said in passing. And what am I talking about? Nesta feels guilty for, quote unquote, abandoning Gwen to have this showdown with Rhys, right? She's with Cassian and Rhys having this showdown. Gwen is over in a corner. And Nesta thinks, quote, she didn't want to think about why that was, why Gwen is like in a corner. What scars had been etched so deeply in Gwen that two of the most trustworthy males in this entire land couldn't put her at ease. So despite the fact that Nesta dislikes Rhys, she believes him to be one of two most trustworthy males, which says a lot, even if she will never admit it out loud.
Yep.
Because obviously, despite her dislike of him, she trusts him with Feyre. With Elaine, with Cassian, there's a lot despite their dislike of each other. She knows inherently that there is something good about Rhys, even if she can't benefit or stand him. Now, before Emery goes back to Windhaven, she promises to come back, and Nesta jokes with her. Quote, Emery answered, I'll come back tomorrow. Nesta angled her head. I had no idea tea and spices were that convincing. Emery smiled slightly. It wasn't only the gift, but the reminder of what they mean. Going back to what Jack said, right? Food is power, but it's the promise of vulnerability. It's the promise of connection.
Yeah, community.
And community. And I love that it's tea and spices, right? Because it's tea is shared, food is shared in community.
It's not like a single serving ramen. That's
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although
ramen. There are now protein ramen brands out there.
Yeah. Cassian and Rhys start to get in an argument. Now they're in each other's head. So Nesta walks away and they're mentally arguing. And Cassian stands up for Nesta, calling Rhys out on his shit. Quote, Cassian went on, you're not making it easier. Let her build these bonds. Stay the hell out of it. Rhys blinked. I'm sorry, I will. Cassian blew out a breath. Rhys added, did you really feel you had to put your arm around her shoulders to restrain her? I do like that Rhys is capable of apologizing, like his blink of, I think, surprise and just kind of being like, oh, okay, like, you're right, I will. The statement of, did you really feel like you had to put your arm around her to restrain her can be looked in different ways. I think it's like restraining her, or is it protectiveness of the bond? At this point, Rhys has suspected, he knows they're probably mates. So I think that everything that Rhys says, you kind of have to look at it through the lens of he knows that they're probably mates. He's smart enough for that.
Yeah. He is smart enough for that, but he has a carelessness about his words when it comes to Nesta.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
Right? And that's what pisses Cassian off. There's a carelessness about Rhys. Rhys does not afford Nesta the respect or consideration of thinking through what he says and the consequences of his words might be.
Yeah.
And I do have a problem with Rhys in this scene because, again, I think he's not only demonstrating carelessness with Nesta, I think he's demonstrating carelessness with Cassian as well. Doesn't matter that they're best friends, right? You can still be careless in your words with your best friend.
Yep.
That's life. And we all make mistakes. So when Rhys asks if Cassian and Nesta have been having sex, quote, Cassian snorted. A polite male never tells. Rhys's laughter rumbled in his mind. I don't think you know what the word polite means. And to me, for Cassian, who was just bent out of shape about Eris and being viewed as a brute, Rhys perpetuates that narrative, the brute narrative, by saying...
On accident, but he does it. You're right.
It's on accident, but it's careless.
No, you're right. You're right.
And Moore does it too, right? She talks about Cassian's bear paws. Like, that was something that was said earlier in the book. I think in a lot of ways, Nesta's going to be the only one to really refrain from the narrative in the future. And that's how you know it's love, is when you're conscious of the impact of your words.
I think we talked about it before of, like, we fall into our own cliches and tropes of ourselves. And I think that sometimes people perpetuate the trope and cliche of, like, what people think of you with these little comments like that.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Thanks.
All right. So now we're in this long ass chapter 29. Always keep an eye on Nesta's interpretation of a situation and what that means for her mentally. So at this point, she comes home from the library and the house is empty. Quote, they were probably either at the river house or out in the city, and she'd been surprised to find herself wishing for the company, surprised to find that the silence of the dining room pressed on her. Of course she wouldn't be invited out. She'd made a point to be as unpleasant as possible for well over a year now. This is her own interpretation. There could very easily have been, you know, they're out for a late work night. Azrael is spying. Like, there's other options than, like, they're all out having fun and they don't want me there. The fact that that's her first guess shows you where she is mentally. And I do want to note that this happens either right before or right after her nightmare. I forget. But it's like she's in a very triggered space because her nightmare is another reoccurring nightmare about her dad and the guilt that she has around her dad. So, of course, it does bring her to this reminder, like, oh, no one wants anything to do with her. And she has a desire to be with others. And I think that idea is sobering. I think that reality of oh, you mean I don't want to be alone all the time? It is vulnerable because now you're admitting to yourself your happiness can and does rely on others too. She's making the rejection up in her mind.
She really is.
But also, like, it's partially true. Like, this is in her mind. She's getting ahead of it.
I think she's making it more intentional than it probably is in some ways, right? Yeah. And we're all guilty of that. I'm especially guilty of that. If you have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, you're going to assume, yeah.
I mean, in case people don't know, like, that's actually an important thing to look into. If you feel like you guys don't handle rejection well, or you feel like you're rejected often, look into it.
Yeah, because it's a thing. Yeah. I've got it. The fact that Nesta doesn't want to be alone, I think, is a huge signal for her character. Quote, she'd been surprised to find herself wishing for the company, surprised to find that the silence of the dining room pressed on her. This is progression for Nesta, a willingness to be around people she knows, Cassian, Azriel, rather than just anyone at the taverns or the music halls. I think we can assume that Nesta isolates because she assumes people hate her, because she assumes people reject her, even though it's the opposite of what she needs or wants. In some ways, because she hates herself so much, she thinks she deserves to be rejected. She thinks she deserves to be alone, even though she doesn't like it. And how does she explain the reason for this? Well, she's a failure. So, of course, no one wants to be around her. Quote, she'd failed every task they'd ever given her, had failed to stop the wall from being blasted apart, failed to save the Illyrian Legion from the cauldron's incinerating blow. Nesta shut down that train of thought. Even though she knows she's a failure, Nesta is not ready to face her failures, right? Because she's still insecure about it. She still believes the false narrative. And so her mind shuts down because that's a survival mechanism for her.
Yep. So while Nesta is doing the stairs, the house gives her bones and stones to try for scrying, which, like, honestly, is the worst location. I don't know what the house was thinking, but Nesta rejects them. Quote, Nesta began the ascent, groaning softly. With each step, she could have sworn she tasted disappointment in the air. We're meant to take that as, like, the house is disappointed in herself, in her. But remember, Nesta is the house. She is disappointed in herself.
Yep.
So this is where it's, like, kind of half truth, where yes, everyone did meet up without Nesta, but, like, they're not out partying. They're having a very sobering conversation, and everyone is trying to talk about the trope. We need to get scrying on this, like, Nesta's got to do more, and then saying, like, wow, this is dangerous. This is a very serious, dangerous thing, and maybe Elaine should also try it. Quote, Azriel stiffened, an outright sign of temper from him as he said quietly, there is an innate darkness to the dread trove that Elaine should not be exposed to. But Nesta should, Cassian growled. Everyone stared at him. He swallowed, offered an apologetic glance to Az, who shrugged it off. I don't think he had anything to apologize for.
Nope, he did not.
I think that's valid.
It's valid. And nobody should have been like, yeah, you're crazy. No.
Yeah. This is why it's so hard for me to like Elaine, is the fact that everyone does treat her this way, but she also accepts it and welcomes it. You know what I mean? Like, she's not out here saying, screw you guys, I'm going to step into my own independence and try to help. You know,
I hope
like,
she does.
I really hope she does, because I don't know if I can handle this.
Yeah.
I can't do this another book with her.
Yeah.
The way they start discussing Nesta and, like, how they're going to get her to scry is very sobering, I think, to the reader. Quote, if we need to manipulate Nesta into scrying, even by using Elaine against her, then we'll do what is necessary. His stomach tightened. I don't like it. You don't have to like it, Amren said. You just have to shut up and do as you're told. I remember initially when this book came out, and even now with conversation, like, that the inner circle is evil, that the inner circle are a bunch of bad people. The inner circle was never good. The inner circle was saving for Farah. The inner circle became her new family, and the inner circle only cares about the inner circle. That is why they call themselves the inner circle and not outer circle that welcomes any and all people.
Inclusive of all.
Right? Like, that's not it's not called the inclusive, you can come and go as you please circle, you know?
Right.
It was always going to be this way. Like, but also they have been warriors and in charge for 500 plus years. Amren way longer. How do you think you're going to stay in charge if you're not willing to do horrible things. It shows their age.
Right. And this is something they would say about Eris if it applied to Eris, right? And we wouldn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
But they're saying this about a 25-year-old woman who is scared and traumatized and depressed.
Yeah. It's not a good thing.
It's a little shitty.
Yeah.
But it's shitty because we're capable of empathy with Nesta.
Yeah.
Right. So we're aware of the shittiness. If it was Vasa, whose point of view we have not been in, whose head we've not been in, who we don't really care about, we wouldn't really care, right? It doesn't make it less bad.
Yeah.
It's just a fact that we have an awareness that we did not have before.
So now we've moved away from this night court meeting, right? And they're like, Nesta's got a week or something like that. Like, she's got to figure this out. And they all disperse. So now we're back with training. We are with our Valkyrie girls and, Valkyrie women. And they are, as if you were sitting there glaring at me with your thank you.
I just wanted to provide positive reinforcement.
I do need that. Thank you. So they're all together. Quote, Emery had brought a copy of one of Drake's Tamer novels for Gwen, who had arrived blushing the next morning, and told Emery that if this book was considered tame, then she could only imagine the content of the others. And all of a sudden I was like, hold up. Does Azriel have a type? This innocent, almost virginal type woman who needs to be saved, that can't take care of themselves type of woman?
Because he is darkness, so he wants to taint what is virginal.
I read that as vaginal women. Like, he wants to taint the vagina.
Virginal. He wants what he can't have. Because he, again, like Nesta, feels like he deserves to be punished.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's going to gravitate to the Gwen and to the Elaine because they are purity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm going to have a trigger warning for what I'm about to say. I appreciate that this concept of purity and innocence is around Gwen, especially after the horrible experience she went through with sexual assault, because I know a lot of women don't feel pure. They don't feel virginal or anything like that afterwards, especially women who might not have had sex and that was their first experience. And I really do appreciate that we are getting Gwen, who has gone through a horrible ordeal like that and is being portrayed as this innocent, clean, pure woman, because someone's assault and their experience does not dictate. You're not dirtied for it. You're not,
right,
tainted
you're not
by
diminished.
it. You're not diminished at all. I just want to throw that out there, that I do appreciate that, I'm not a huge fan of like this, like, I'm just so innocent thing, but I really do appreciate that from Gwen. And I feel like what it symbolizes for me for when I read her.
Yeah, and I agree. Never mind the fact that she doesn't view herself as worthy or clean, right?
Yeah.
She views herself as unclean. But everybody around her, including the readers, like, girl, you were robbed of something. Yeah. You have survived something horrific, but you are still innocent in our eyes.
Yeah. Someone's horrible experience does not devalue them. And you are absolutely still clean. Other people's actions does not do that. We learn now that Gwen's last name is Berdara. I don't know, guys. I don't know what it means. I don't know if there's origins behind it. I was looking at online and people are saying in Indonesia, it translates to bloody or bleeding, but then I don't like that, and where it can link to this. And I want to say there's a last name. And I don't know. Someone smarter than I will have to come forth and tell us origins there, please.
Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
I wonder if it has to do with her red hair.
Maybe. I don't know. SJM typically stays within Celtic origin.
Yeah.
She doesn't really explore. She barely goes into Greek mythology. Yeah. She usually stays within English, Irish, Celtic, Scottish, within the Isles lore. So Nesta is starting to get some control over her power. So we've now hopped over to Under the Mountain, or in the library. Also, I realize there's just so much with this mountain. You have the House of Wind, and then you have the library, and then under the mountain is where all the other court is, or is it a different mountain that they're under?
It's a different mountain.
Okay, I was about to be this is a very cluttered mountain. I know it's not in Valaris.
Yeah.
So I was we're doing a lot with mountains.
The Moonlit Palace is above the Court of Nightmares.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a different mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where Feyre was originally brought to.
Yes, exactly.
So now we're in the library with the priestesses. Meryl is going in hard with Nesta, and they're arguing. And at this point, Nesta has some control over her power, and the description of her power is very telling to me. Quote, Nesta let enough of her power simmer to the surface that she knew her own eyes glowed. Let it crackle, even as she ignored its wild, unholy bellowing. So she's exercising some control, guys. Like, she's letting it come to the surface. She's letting it show. So many times, she did not let it show. She would smother it below the surface. She didn't want it to be seen in her eyes, and now she's letting it come to the surface. You also have this idea that it's unholy. We're continuing the religious descriptors, even though it comes from the cauldron, which is in fact holy for them.
Yep, it's true.
So
it's true.
In theory, Nesta's the one who makes it unholy, if we're keeping up with logic.
Yeah. And although her power is so powerful and she's able to control it, that control only goes so far. And like her need to control Elaine, her need to control her power is a form of power for Nesta. And I know that's a little convoluted, but Nesta has this false belief that choosing to tamp down the power the cauldron gave her puts her in more control of herself and everything around her. Quote, Nesta's power rumbled in her veins. She stomped on it, shoved it down, and strangled it. But at the end of the day, Nesta's power is a reflection of herself. So for her to stomp on it, shove it, strangle it, what she's really doing is strangling herself because she finds herself unholy, like Jack said. When Meryl finally leaves Gwen and Nesta alone, Nesta is able to settle down. Quote, Nesta dropped the thread of her power, quelling its music and roaring with an iron hand. Notice how her magical power is musical. And we know that Nesta loves music. She loves dancing. She loves movement. And so on some level, she knows that to quell her magic is to quell her truest self, to quell the music inside her, which is the opposite of her feeling like herself. It's so nuanced and it's so brief, but I think Ashram does a good job indicating what this means for Nesta from a psychoanalytical lens.
We then get some of Gwen's backstory, and we'll get more into that in the Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks section. But know for now that Gwen is used to people being prejudiced against her. And this was almost like it's a secret for Nesta. She's worried when Nesta finds out. And Nesta's like, oh my God, I'm judged too. Different reasons, but like, yay, I don't judge you, you don't judge me. I want to call out the comparison that you may not have made. I don't know, I was saying you, not you, but like you, the listener. So when Cassian is now with the new priestesses, so Nesta is like, fuck you, Meryl. And then the next day, priestesses show up because they're inspired. And they're all talking, and Cassian is with the new priestesses, quote, but the three of them huddled together as Cassian offered a casual smile that was nearly a replica of Rhys's, designed to put people at ease and lessen the threat of his power, his body. The way that Cassian and Rhys are both aware of their body and what they put out to make people comfortable is very similar to what Nesta does to make people uncomfortable, to feel mad. Like she does these very specific things and calls it out, saying like, and I gave them a look knowing it would piss people off. Everyone's very much in control of their own reactions and everything. There is a look that I do know I can give men, and they're the ones who like the almost like doughy eye innocent thing. I can do it well. Okay. I have tried to bust it out at the gym before. Okay. I'm better than that. All right. I don't know if you've ever seen it in the work, in the wild. I keep it.
Yeah, because you're never looking at me.
No, I wouldn't. I'll try to direct it.
Lululemon knows the 2 times you'll love your everyday pants the most are when they're brand new and when they're broken in. Lululemon's new Easy 5 pants are designed to let you enjoy both feelings at the very same time. Because Easy 5 is the brand new pant that delivers a broken-in feel from day one. Engineered with the structure you want and the touch of stretch you need. Easy 5 casually outperforms denim. Shop now, in-store or online. Athletic innovation for everyday life. Lululemon.
Nesta has become invested in these priestesses, and they are her responsibility, and has kind of become the leader of this group. Quote, all of them looked to Nesta, but she wasn't the leader here. She threw Cassian a glance, and he gave her a shrug as if to say, I'm just the instructor. Nesta is finding direction by becoming a leader. Never in Nesta's wildest dreams would she imagine herself as a leader. But Cassian is a leader, is he not? Cassian is a general, and if they are mates, they are going to be similar. And I love that Cassian has given Nesta room to be a leader. Remember, for Nesta, the priestesses are her redemption. They are her responsibility. And he's giving her room for that. And I feel like it's just another moment where they're mimicking one another. So after being inspired by the priestesses and the fact that they were willing to go outside, some of them kept their hood up the entire time of practice. Nesta then decides that she needs to push herself and try to use the bones and scrones. I was like, scrotum. The bones and stones for he looks so grossed out. To scry. Quote, I'm asking them to be brave, to work hard, to face their fears, yet I'm not doing the same. This is her redemption arc. They are her redemption. It's moments like these where you are saying like, this is how Nesta is redeemed, is through removing herself and going into the others.
Just adding a little psychoanalytical lens layer on top of that, because Nesta projects herself onto the priestesses. If they're brave, they are her mirrors. So that bravery is reflected onto her.
Yeah.
Right. And so she gains strength from them, and it encourages her to be brave too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Nesta and Cassian are in the library of the House of Wind, and they're about to scry. And Nesta's just kind of like justifying why she asked Cassian. Quote, she invited him here after she returned from working in the library out of pure caution, she told herself. If she lost control, if she wasn't able to witness where her finger landed on the map, someone had to be there. That person just so happened to be him. Never mind that he'd once stood behind her, his hand on her back as it was now, and he let her lean into his warmth and strength. Unreliable narrator, right? When anytime you have to say, like, I told myself what they told themselves, you know that's a lie. And it's like, never mind that. Unreliable narrator.
It is cute.
Now, Nesta isn't able to get the bones and stones to work, and she starts to spiral from that. Quote, she failed her father, failed Farah for years before that, failed her mother, she supposed, and with Elaine she failed as well. First in letting her get taken by Hybern that night they'd been stolen from their beds, then by letting her go into that cauldron, then when the cauldron had taken her from the heart of Hybern's camp, she failed, and there was no end to it, no end. In her most intense moments, does she allow herself to feel bad about Farah? I feel like it shows her guilt with Farah is so deep and is so ingrained in her own self-hatred that it only comes up in her deepest spirals. She focuses on Elaine in general, but her relationship with Elaine, I feel like, is relatively superficial. I'm not saying that it's superficial and that she doesn't like Elaine, but it doesn't go as deep as her guilt with Farah.
Right, because Farah's identity and youth are tied up in Nesta's hatred for herself and her father. Yeah.
And it also shows that in Nesta's own mind, her mindset is about putting responsibility onto herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
She is mad at herself because she feels like she screwed up.
Right. And that's a clear indication of depression. This idea of responsibility, either where there is none, or responsibility and failure. And yeah, maybe she did fail, but I liked what you were saying about her relationship with Elaine. Elaine doesn't make Nesta feel like she failed. Her relationship with Elaine is not covered in negativity, is not tied to her self-hatred. So it's easy for her to fixate on Elaine and see Elaine as the favorite because it's not tied to the reasons for her depression. And this idea of Nesta being like, okay, everybody was brave. I can be brave too. I'm going to try it. Oh, wait, I failed. I failed a lot. Now I need to take 10 steps backward. Might have just taken 2 steps forward, but I need to take 10 steps backward. For some people, that's their experience with depression. Your mind actively works against you to bring you back down every time you try to get up. It's meant to make you feel powerless. And Nesta is actively working against herself. She's working against her power. She's working against her emotions, her mind, her heart. Like, she's trying to keep herself small because she doesn't want to fail. And that's why she retreats.
Your mind will naturally look for evidence. It's up to us to make sure it finds the positive evidence, not the negative evidence. Also, like, what if one of those priestesses was, like, down in her quarters feeling like she failed? Like, I wasn't able to take my hood off. I wasn't able to balance. Failure is many times, not all the time, but many times self-deemed. So remember when I talked about the sky being described as a bowl? Is back. This is while she's scrying, quote, Nesta pictured the cauldron, the vast bowl of darkest iron. We're back with the bowl. And again, I just find it so strange to describe the sky as a bowl. I feel like, one, it proves that SJM is not a flat earther because bowls are curved and so is the sky. And I can kind of imagine it. But two, I think that there is this idea that vastness does kind of haunt her.
Yeah, the cauldron is to Nesta what the outside world is to Gwyn.
Ooh, even better. Good job.
Thanks. So when Nesta ultimately isn't able to scry, she becomes consumed by her depression all over again, and she's not able to give herself credit for even trying. Like, the fact that she was even willing to try should have been a positive, but she can't give herself that credit. Quote, she couldn't endure the disappointment in Cassian's voice either, as he said, all right. She didn't eat dinner with him, didn't do anything except crawl into her bed and stare up at the darkness and free fall into it. Now, remember, Nesta attributes meaning where there might not be meaning or where she misinterprets it. Yeah. And she's mistaken the tone of Cassian's voice as disappointment and judging because that's what her greatest fear, right? And because she fears judgment, she isolates herself because if she's isolated, people can't see her, people can't judge her. Now, knowing what we know from the Call Her Daddy episode with SJM, this was probably very personal for SJM. Like, she's writing from experience. She's writing from her own experience with depression. And that really hits home because I really relate to this scene and what Nesta is experiencing.
Yep.
Now, because Nesta has attempted to scry during her waking hours, the Dread Trove comes calling for Nesta while she's asleep, and the imagery associated with their power is dark and predatory. Quote, winding through the hallways of the house, wending like a dark snake, it searched and sniffed and hunted for her. The darkness slithered to her bed, and she forced her eyes open to see it gather over her, a cloud with no shape, no form, but such wicked presence that she knew its name before it leaped. I love this segment. It's just good writing. You can feel Nesta's terror. And once again, there's the religious connotation of wickedness, of evil.
I feel like SJM's writing is such a flex in this book. For me personally, this is her most well-written book that I can remember. Circle back with Kingdom of Ash once I reread that. But currently, this is one of my favorites because there's just so much heart in it of herself and that capturing of terror, that capturing of her nightmare, of that self-loathing. And Nesta's now in her nightmare mode and she's screaming, and that screaming wakes up Cassian. Quote, his body distilled at that scream, as if it were no more than the knife in his hand, a weapon to be used to eliminate and destroy any threats to her, to kill and not stop until every last enemy was dead or bleeding. I love this description because Nesta is that weapon. Her scream is the blade. He's talking about it that her scream is like the fuel that's going to get him to kill others, but she herself is a weapon. Remember, this whole part is called Blade. And she also, you could say, forges his weapon. And I don't mean that in a sexual way. So Nesta's powers like start to rage on, like that she is in the throes of her nightmare. And then Rhys comes crashing in and he coats her in darkness. Quote, and as Nesta erupted, silver fire blasting outward, Rhys pounced. He smothered her fire with his darkness, as if he dropped a blanket on it. Nesta screamed, and this time it was a sound of pain. This is fantastic because Rhys, as we've said, is Nesta's counterpart in many ways, in both power and in personality. And we see it visually shown this way. And I do really like how it's done. You can look at this as a tricky writing moment where Rhys is the most powerful Fae to have ever lived, and Nesta has the cauldron's power. So who wins? Who's more powerful? And I don't think that either walk away particularly victorious here. And I think she handled that really well. Also, another similarity here is that they both woke up from a nightmare with their power and had their mate calm them down. I know it's like, I'm sure as she was writing it, she was like, I've already done this before and I'm going to do it again. And you know what? SJM, you can do it again. I won't be mad. Now, I don't have a note to this next part. I just like it when men feel guilty. Quote, Rhys rubbed his face and slowly straightened. He met Cassian's stare unflinchingly, his eyes full of remorse and agony. Her trauma is... Rhys's throat bobbed. I know, Cassian whispered. I guessed, Rhys breathed, but it was different to feel it.
I have a note, and that is, this was so important.
Yeah.
This was so necessary for any bridges to ever be built between Rhys and Nesta, because Rhys is solely focused on his trauma, his mate's trauma, and how that impacts them and what they feel, that everybody's else's trauma is minuscule in comparison. So for him to finally truly experience Nesta's trauma, to understand the extent of it, is important because he is capable of empathy. And he was only ever going to empathize with Nesta by truly feeling her pain.
Yes.
And so to know her trauma also is to recognize himself in her, right? Because they are mirrors of each other. And that's going to be critical to their ability to develop any sort of relationship.
Absolutely. All right, take a sip. We're in chapter 30. It's the day after the nightmare, and we're in Nesta's point of view. She wakes up and, well, as she's waking up, quote, and the terror had stopped, as if the axis of the world had shifted towards that voice which became a doorway full of light and strength. And what she's referencing is that Cassian is the one who was the voice, because all he had to do was Nesta. And then she was like, oh my God. But threshold, notice the threshold. Change, good, positive here. I also respect good and consistent writing. And if there's anything that SJM is, it is consistent. And it gives me like tingles on how much I appreciate it. Quote, another male voice in her mind. This one had been familiar as well and full of power, but it had been kind in a way that she never heard the voice to be to her, and it had eased her from the black pit of the dream, leading her with a star-flecked hand back to a land of drifting clouds and rolling hills under a bright moon. Stars.
Yep, star-flecked hand. Like, I really appreciate the softness of this description and the image that it paints of Rhys, because we know it's Rhys, right? We know it because we saw the flip side. We know it because of the star-flecked hand. What it says to me is that at their basest forms, Rhys and Nesta can be kind to one another.
Yeah.
They both have a lot of trauma. They both have a lot of history that's layered and creates the resistance that they experience with one another. And so it's difficult for them to access that kindness. But Rhys's view of Nesta has changed. And I think Nesta's view of Rhys changes after this as well, because he has shown her kindness that he's never shown her before.
While Rhys is knight, the bond between Nesta and Cassian is different. It's warmer. It's brighter. And we see that when she wakes up and looks at a sleeping Cassian. Quote, the sun gilded his dark hair and shone through his wings, bringing out the undertones of red and gold in both. It's very much the opposite of Rhys in many, many ways, and it shows like just how good Cassian is. Honestly, still a little creeped out about this idea of like, because the bat wings of see-through, like, ew. Ew.
I will say, I didn't write it down, but this is a lot like previous books in the series where I've talked about the symbol of true mates is with the sun and with gold. And we're seeing that right now here as Nesta views Cassian in his sleep. And the light around him reflects what she saw in her nightmare, right? It's the light that helped her leave her nightmare. That is Cassian. And in this moment, she once again views him as a warrior prince and glorifies him because he's present, because he is here with her and he deserves the glory for that consideration. Quote, like a knight guarding his lady, she couldn't stop the image, sprung from the pages of her childhood books, like a warrior prince, with those tattoos and that muscle-bound chest. I think it's so adorable that her awe of him reflects back in innocence of
Yeah.
her childhood.
Yeah.
He fulfills a fantasy, maybe, of her childhood that grown Nesta might have too much disdain for, but at her core, the child in her sees him for who he is and wants that for herself.
It is very childlike. It's funny because we've gone from, they compare each other to royalty to, in this moment, he's a knight guarding his lady. He's a warrior prince. And it really does take us back to childhood fantasy. And I think it shows, like you're saying, the vulnerability that Nesta has, where she is able to lean into that childhood, girlhood daydream that she has.
Yeah.
I never imagined being a princess.
I didn't either. I was usually the evil queen.
So Cassian stayed overnight in a chair and he's watching Nesta. And in the morning, it's not awkward. And I appreciate that. Nesta's not hiding. Cassian's not being weird about it. Quote, but Cassian threw her a half smile, and it was so normal, so him in a way that no one else was or would ever be, that her throat tightened again. You want breakfast? And it's like what you were saying, where the golden light many times in past SJM books represents the mate bond. So of course that there's this moment of safety and a true, like, yeah, this is him. Like, this is her man. This is her guy. Plus, food is healing. There's a lot of food in this book. There's a lot of food.
There is. Now, Nesta joins training later in the day with Gwen and Emery, and Emery makes a comment to Nesta because Nesta obviously didn't get a lot of rest the night before. And Emery says, quote, you look white as death, which is very on the nose because what we didn't say is that Rhys has just revealed that Nesta's power is pure death. So a little haha for us as readers. Now, sharing the truth about her nightmare is surprisingly freeing for Nesta. And she's learning through her relationship with Gwen and Emery that Nesta doesn't actually have to keep things to herself, right? There's something liberating about sharing. Quote, I dreamed of the cauldron, what it did to me. Gwen said, playing with her hair, I dream of my past too. But Gwen's admission, Nesta's own, didn't weigh them down. Nesta's head had cleared slightly, and somehow she found she could push herself harder. What I like about this is, like, freedom from her demons, from her trauma, equals physical strength, is like gaining strength. So as she's gaining mental fortitude, that same strength is reflected in her physical training. And so we can argue that the stronger Nesta becomes physically in the book, the more power she also has over her emotional trauma and baggage.
Yep. And finally, I want to point out a mistake that we made in a past episode.
Okay.
So this is Rhys talking about the baby and what he discovered. Quote, the baby has wings. Joy sparked through Cassian, even as the broken whisper and what those words meant made his blood go cold. You're sure? We had an appointment with Maja yesterday morning. Okay, so now Rhys has discovered about the dangers of the baby, which means his moodiness was just moodiness from Farah being pregnant, I guess?
Yes. So we were wrong the times that we've pointed out Rhys's moodiness up until this point. I do wonder if his moodiness is, like, tied to Nesta and the pain that that's causing Cassian and Farah.
Yeah.
Or is it... I think new parents have a lot of anxieties about, like, bringing a child into the world. Can I take care of them? Can I protect them? I'm sure that's part of it, too.
Yeah.
And, of course, Brie Ellen.
Yeah. I mean, Rhys has a lot to be moody for. I don't blame him. However, I was, we're here to be honest with you guys. And that...
Yeah. And we got it wrong.
That's our bad. We're never wrong about anything else, ever. Absolutely not.
Not at all.
You got a question for me?
I do. So wrapping up today's discussion, what are Nesta's outlets and or inspirations in this section? And do these reflect a turning point in her development as a character?
Yes. Okay. So like Nesta's finding healthy outlets, right? Training being one of them. Also friendship being one of them. Mm-hmm. Having friends to vent to, having friends to talk things through is one of the most important things. Having friends to just not judge you is one of the most important things. What I like is how much it kind of counters her previous vices, right? She liked sex. She liked dancing. She liked music. I think you can argue like sex with Cassian, but dancing, you can replicate that with the physical training, and music, you can say like there's something communal with her friends, right? Like, because when you're watching music, there's a community there. And then the fact that Gwen sings too, right? Like music is linked to her friends. So I do like that her vices are still there. Like the things that draw her to those vices are still there, but now shifted in a healthier direction.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think what also helps is that each of these draw Nesta outside herself. The vices of, and they're not vices for everybody, but for Nesta, in her case, the sex, the alcohol, the music halls, those were although exterior activities was a lot of interiority for Nesta, a way for her to burrow into herself. But instead, with training, working in the library, getting spices for Emery, and trying to convince the priestesses to train, those are activities that draw her outside of herself.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Yep.
One of the things that used to really irritate me when I used to go to church was that they would say, well, if you feel bad, go do some service. You'll feel better. And I understand the sentiment because that's essentially what's happening, right? When you do something with other people in mind, it's easier to forget your problems or to work through your problems because you have some distance from them. It annoyed me when I was very depressed, but it is a good antidote for the spiral inside yourself. And that's what we're seeing with Nesta.
One of the most important things that anyone can do when they're depressed is not isolate. And that's the thing you want to do the most, right?
Right.
I don't have clinical depression, but I am bipolar, and I'm like super duper awesomely medicated right now. And unfortunately, my psychiatrist was like, let's pull you back. And I'm like, I feel nothing right now. Why are we doing that?
Yeah.
So funny enough, if some of the symptoms come back, like I'm actually even spicier without medication. Anyway, but like one of the things I had to learn during my lows was to be open. Like I had to text people and say, can you check in on me? These are like, make sure I eat the rainbow. My mom has to call me every night to make sure that I am taking my melatonin to go to bed. Like you put something in play. Yeah. What I like about this is that depression is not meant to be isolating. Your brain is working against you, and you think you want to be alone. You may want to be alone, but like you cannot trust a damn thing your brain says at that time. And I think that service is good, but part of service is being with other people. And Nesta finding Emery and Gwen, she's letting those people in. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do when you're depressed is not isolate.
And I think what is also equally important is being vulnerable. Yeah. Right? About where you're at. So one of the things I admire about you and your plan for when you have a bipolar episode is having to tell people, I am about to enter an episode. And that's a really difficult thing to admit. It doesn't matter if you have clinical depression. It doesn't matter if you're bipolar. It doesn't matter if you've lived with it for 20 years. Like that is still a difficult thing to tell another person.
Like that's the thing is like it seeps everywhere. I have to tell every person that's in my life. Like otherwise it might be like, oh my God, she's just blowing me off. Oh my God, like she's just so in her head, because people think that everything revolves around them. That they did something wrong or it's directed at them. But thank you. I appreciate it. I'm proud of you for every time I ask you, you're more direct about things.
Oh, about my depression?
Yeah. Where I'm like, where are you at? What's going on? How are you feeling? Is everything good? And like being able to communicate and willing to communicate.
Yeah, it sucks.
On it.
I mean, in my case, because I've had clinical depression for 20 years, I feel like a failure. Like, why am I spiraling again? I've gone through so many spirals. I know. I don't want to spiral right now.
It's like every time I spill on my period. Sorry. It's like, I've done this for so long.
Why do I keep failing?
Why did I stain another pair of underwear? I'm a pro at this.
Am I ever going to get it? Or am I just going to live with this until menopause? Because if I haven't gotten it yet, I'm never going to get it.
No. It is the most annoying thing when you accidentally stain another pair and you're just like, I'm not a rookie. So for any young women, it doesn't get easier.
Yeah. If you're not staining your underwear, you have superpowers.
You're a goddess among men, among women. Like, who are you? All right. So we're cutting off early because my video ended early. So au revoir. Thanks for listening to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Join us Wednesday for our Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks discussion from today's chapters from Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Silver Flames. Also, not Wednesday, tomorrow. Oh, it is Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah.
What I said.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps other readers find us. And of course, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode. Share your comments through our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com, and we might feature your feedback in a future mini episode or in a Patreon exclusive episode.
For merch and more ways to support the show, head to booktalkforbooktalk.com. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. And don't forget to join us as we keep the analysis going by subscribing to our Substack to get more insights into the romantasy and romance genres. Head to the subtextsocietyjournal.substack.com.
Bye.
Struggling to find the right metabolic wellness support, even when you're doing everything right, has been one of the most frustrating things for me in my health journey.
I've tried other metabolic wellness support providers, and I often feel rejected rather than supported by the process.
That's because Brello is focused on long-term health, longevity, and performance, not quick fixes.
Brello is designed for people who want a more sustainable approach to their metabolic wellness support. Their support helps you focus on habits, education, and structure alongside provider oversight.
Getting my GLP-1 through Brello has been so easy. They make it so effortless, and they provide all the support I need through their app.
Their app is one of a kind in my book because it allows you to track progress, manage reminders, and stay on top of renewals. And if you're like me, managing the renewals is the hardest part.
Everything is managed online, making it easier to stay consistent over time, and medications are delivered to your door. They're so transparent with their pricing with one flat monthly cost. Go to BrelloHealth.com to see if you qualify and explore their GLP-1 plans, starting at $133 per month for your first 3 months, plus access to their app, community, and wellness classes. That's BRELLO health.com.
Any information provided is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional medical consultation, diagnosis, or treatment. All patients must consult with a healthcare provider prior to the prescription or dispensing of any medication, which will be done only pursuant to a valid prescription. Compounded drug products are not FDA approved, and the FDA does not evaluate their safety, effectiveness, or quality. Patients are encouraged to discuss the risks, benefits, and appropriateness of any medications, including compounded products, with their healthcare provider before use.
I have the most complicated period ritual just to make sure that I am comfortable and I don't have any accidents. And at the end of the day, I'm not comfortable and I still have accidents. I am so happy that I have finally made the jump to Knix because I can sleep so much easier when I'm on my period now with their leak-proof underwear.
Knix, that's KNIX, has completely changed how I feel about my period. Their leak-proof technology not only looks and feels like regular underwear, but it washes like regular underwear, and they have a range of absorbencies because if you're like me, my period keeps changing. The heavier days are heavier and shorter, and I don't know what to expect. With up to 6 super tampons worth of absorption, I'm totally covered.
Plus, Knix has patent-bonded edges to prevent side leaks. We all know about those dreaded side leaks. They are the bane of my existence. Their underwear is buttery soft, stretchy fabric, and cuts like thong, bikini, boy shorts, high rise, and more. Their thong has seriously changed everything. I wear that on my last day of the period where I just need something for the gym. Pad doesn't feel comfortable. Tampons don't feel comfortable. Knix, game changer.
I swear by their boy shorts for overnight on heavy nights. I even wore those boy shorts under my dress during my engagement photo shoot. They were lifesavers. Head to Knix.com and you'll see why we love Knix. Use code BOOKTALK, that's BOOKTALK, for 15% off your order.
Get leak-proof undies, amazing bras, and more. That's KNIX.com using code BOOKTALK, BOOKTALK, Nix.com.